Welcome and welcome back. Today we have got ourselves another relic reveal and another Echo Boss reveal. So let's talk about it. And of course, we have got to start with the relic. We got ourselves our second tier 8 today, Flask of Fervour. What is this thing gonna be doing? Well, we were sort of right on the prediction, sort of not. When we take this relic, we are getting ourselves the Flask of Fervour. That's this little item up here in the top left. This is an active item. I know this relic's not going to be a passive thing this year. We're going to talk about it. Hold on. It's going to give you full HP, full prayer, and full spec bar. Plus, you're going to get an effect over the next 2.4 seconds. It's going to reduce all damage taken to 0, and it's going to do 3 waves of 60% of your prayer level in a 3x3 area. So essentially, you're going to be doing 60 damage times 3 or 180 in total in this little area. Now, this does have a 3-minute cooldown in order to use it, but it also comes with a cooldown reduction of 0.6 seconds every 10 damage that you do in a single hit. So it's not total 10 damage as you're doing it, but anytime that you roll a large hit, it's going to reduce the cooldown by 0.6 seconds. So my guess on this is realistically the cooldown is probably somewhere between like a minute or 2, just depending on how good your DPS is. But in general, in leagues, you are hitting like some pretty big numbers, so I think you're going to get a lot of cooldown reduction out of this. Oh, and this one doesn't work on Yama, or at least the damage doesn't. You know, kind of like the minion one. Oh, I hope the Yama fight isn't just an awful slog, dude. If a Yama ends up being immune to literally everything in leagues, that would be horrible. But before I talk about the implications of this relic and what it's competing against in Tier 8, what you should pick, I wanted to go ahead and get the comparisons out of the way, because I know people are going to be doing this. We've had a somewhat similar relic a couple of times in the last few leagues. So I've got Last Stand from Raging Echoes and the Undying Retribution from Trailblazer Reloaded. And I've just got kind of like the quick bullet points of what these things are doing. Flask of Fervour, it's active, and the last couple of times we've had this relic or something similar, it's been passive. And we have also lost the sort of like no death thing that comes with this. Because it's active, you do have a period of no damage, but you gotta know when you need it. And I think that makes it a little bit hard to use compared to something like Last Stand or Undying Retribution. Now, the healing on this relic is better, because not only are you getting full health, you're getting full prayer, and you're getting full spec bar. So it almost functions a little bit like a spec relic as well. Whereas you can see last year's, we only had full health, and Undying Retribution gave health and prayer, so it's a little bit better. The explosion radius is a little smaller than if you had Undying Relic a couple of leagues ago. Damage is kind of on par. Cooldowns are all pretty much the same, except this one has some cooldown reduction. Now, one of the funny things that someone pointed out in the Discord to me, because they've made the radius smaller, it's a 3x3 area, you'll be able to use it at most things, except maybe in Kandrin. Dude, how can Kandrin just take so many free L's? The Kraken is like away from the bridge where you stand on it, so I don't think you can reach it with this relic. And likewise, the Echo Thermonuclear Smoke Devil, if they keep the mechanics the same as last year, I think it's farther away than the little circles where you stand as you kind of move around the boss and fight it. So, like, dude, Kandrin can't win, man. What is? Are there other bosses that this can't hit? Those might be the only ones. Maybe Zuck. You probably can't hit Zuck with this. Oh, it's too funny, dude. It's too funny. I don't know if they do this intentionally or what. So to kind of compare these 3 relics together, just so you can get a feel of like, well, how good is this thing? DPS-wise, it's probably worse than what we had in Raging Echoes, because that one gave you just like a really big stat boost over like 10 seconds. So you could really crank out a lot of damage during that time. And then compared to something like Undying Retribution, well, this one has a cooldown reduction built into it. So it's not like you have to wait to die for it to come back. It's not like a one-time use during a boss fight. You will probably rotate through it a few times while you're in there. Now, I haven't done the math. I mean, I think it is possible that Flask of Fervour does more damage than what we had last year, but I'll save that for the PVM experts out there who really want to like min-max the math. I think for like the average player, this is probably the order that I'd put them in. Now, it is worth noting, this one also gives special attack back. So depending on what we have in terms of like other relics, combat masteries, what the spec weapons are in the game, this one may be able to outperform both of these just because of the spec side of things, but I think we'll have to wait and see on that one. Now, if you're looking for something that's just helping you kill things that aren't bosses in the game, I think this one's probably going to take the win, because while you could activate the other ones in the previous leagues by getting your health really, really low and then, essentially like dying to a Necreol or something and having the effects go off, it was kind of difficult to use. This one's just like you click the flask, do your little AoE explosion, and then you just keep hitting on the mobs. And the cooldown reduction does work in multi. So if you're doing something like barraging a Slayer task, then you're going to get this back really, really fast. So I do think it's got better potential with the random mob side of things. But okay, that's previous relics. Supposedly comparison is the Thief of Joy. Maybe. Let's see what it's against for current tier 8, right? Well, we already know the minion relic. We saw that one a couple days ago, and I suspect we're going to get the Executioner's Axe in here. It'll probably be a little bit different than the last time we saw it, because they've been changing these up for pretty much all of them. But what would I pick? What would I go with of this tier for what we know right now? Well, I think kind of like what I was doing with the comparison of previous relics, we can break it up into some categories here. So if we're looking at something like bossing, which one of these provides the most value? If Executioner works in a similar way to what it did last year, then finishing a boss off at like 20%, 15%, 30%, wherever it lands, that is probably going to provide you more value at more bosses than something like the Flask of Fervour or the Minion Relic. Now, the Flask of Fervour on the weaker bosses, 180 damage is going to be a lot, and it might actually outclass something like Executioner. So it is going to depend a little bit on your area. If you're in something like Asgarnia and you're doing the God Wars bosses, they don't actually have that much health. So you probably are going to get better benefit out of something like Flask of Fervour. But for a boss like Nex, or if you're going into raids, or maybe like Vazani's Nightmare, skipping an entire phase is typically going to be a lot of health, and it might also save you a lot of trouble too. So on the bossing side, I don't know. I don't see that there's like a huge discrepancy here between these, at least in terms of like the damage and the value they provide. Just Executioner's probably a little better. The other two, they're about even. We'll come back to the healing aspect here in a second, but that, it may provide you a little bit more value depending on the bosses that you're doing, especially like the longer ones. But okay, for the random mobs of these three, Executioner doesn't do anything for you, so okay, that's nice for these two. Now, how do I feel about using Flask of Fervour versus Minion if I'm like barraging a Slayer task? For me, I think they feel about the same. The Minion DPS is pretty strong, especially once you've fed it some Zamorak items. It also does AoE by itself, and it's always going to be like chugging away at stuff, right? I mean, there's no cooldown in the middle, so I'm tempted to say the Minion probably squeaks ahead here, and I do like the passivity of the Minion compared to the activeness of the Flask of Fervour, but at the same time, they're probably still pretty similar. 180 damage is going to kill, I think, any random mob in the game. Like, the only thing that are really going to hold up to that are going to be things like bosses. So, I don't know. Those two, they're about even. On the healing front, yeah, I mean, there's only one relic that's going to provide you healing value there. Getting full prayer, getting full health, that is good. There's maybe an argument to be said about, like, the higher your damages, the less healing you need. So I kept the other two relics in there, but it's not like they literally heal you. So if you're looking for something that's going to like save you supplies, maybe you're doing a lot of Inferno runs and you don't want to have to worry about like bringing in potions and food and whatever, then I do think that this one's going to bring you a lot of value. And then of course there's the special restore. We don't know what all of the other relics are, and we don't know what the combat masteries are. So it's hard to say right now if the spec restore on this thing is going to be like the go-to for special attack. Now, there may be some cool things you can do with your builds where maybe you like avoid if there's like another special attack relic. Maybe there's like some special attack combat mastery. So if you go down a certain route, maybe you like don't have any special restore, and this kind of helps fill that gap for you. So, I mean, that could be an option. Or if this ends up being like the go-to spec relic, then it is there for you. I don't know if I like how this compares to something like the special relic we had last year, where it reduced the cost of specials, and it also restored your special every time you got a kill. So I feel like if this is trying to be the spec relic, it's probably not as powerful. But I also, just because the way this is set up, I would be a little surprised if this is the only thing we get for special attack. So I guess we'll have to see on that front. So to put this another way, how am I looking at these three? Well, for Executioners, it's an active use thing, and I think that's probably going to win out on the majority of bosses, so that's where I would be leaning. If I want to do like a lot of really big boss farming, I want to send like 300 Chambers of Xeric because I'm really sad that I took Kourend and Chamber still doesn't give guaranteed purples. That's a me problem. I'm okay, sorry, I'm moving on. I'm moving past it. Kourend's great. I'm not regretting my top choice, okay? For the Minion Relic, it is passive DPS increase. It's kind of just going to do that for you anywhere. So if you want something that's kind of like the more AFK option, it's also picking up your items for you. That feels kind of like where this is at. And then for Flask of Fervour, maybe something with the special. Maybe you want those supplies. It is active, so that can be both a blessing and a curse. Maybe you don't take this if you have Kandrin because you can't use it on your bosses. Now, this also gave me the side thought of it's kind of sharing what we had from last recall, so I wonder if we're going to get last recall at all, or maybe it's going to be last recall minus all of the healing effects, which almost makes it sound more like a teleport relic. You know, you save your spot somewhere on the map and you can go back to it. But I'll save those thoughts for a minute, because it's now time to update the board. So this is where it was at yesterday, and I finally have some good news. I got that one right, and I even got the actual, like, relic thing it was on. Yay me, little pat on the back, you know? It's been a while since I got one completely correct. I think the only other one might have been Endless Harvest right at the beginning. I probably got Minion correct, too. Okay, we're doing all right. We're, like, 30% accurate right now or something. That's horrible. Horrible odds. Now, I did want to shift that last recall, because the more I'm thinking about it, the more that makes a lot of sense to me that since we have the healing here on Flask of Fervour, we're probably not going to see that same effect added to something like Last Recall. But if that's the case, Last Recall would be a complete dud at tier 7. So I'm wondering if it's going to be in the teleport tier. And I also don't know, like, does that actually compete with something like Evil Eye or the bank teleports, if that's what this ends up being? And I kind of think maybe yes, because not only can it let you save a spot next to a boss, so yeah, Evil Eye is probably better when it comes to boss farming because you can just get to any bosses, but saving your spot anywhere in the world can have some interesting side effects for things like skilling. So things like rune crafting, for example, saving your spot right at the top of an altar and then just having a different teleport that gets you back to a bank. Yeah, maybe you have like a crafting cape if you're in Asgarnia, maybe you have like the Ring of Dueling and you've unlocked the Colosseum bank, because you got into like wave 4, wave 5, so now you can use it. And doing something like that can really speed up certain skills. Because of that, it does make me think, you know, maybe it would be competitive. So we're going to have something like, here's a boss-focused one, here's like a more mobility-focused one, and then here is our kind of like weird utility one. I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch. We still have no information on these other two teleport relics, so again, it's a little bit we'll have to see. So let me know if you think I'm onto something, because I kind of feel like I'm cooking with that. Now, of course, that wasn't the only reveal that we got today. We also got this picture here. So it looks like we are getting Echo Hespori making a return. I have mixed feelings on that. I'll talk about that in a second. But we've also got this guy on screen. He's holding a bow. And the text that came along with this: harness the ultimate power of restoration and renew both your prayer and hit points with a new ranged Echo item. Conquer the returning Echo boss Hespori and wield a short bow forged from tangled roots. So yeah, Hespori's back. That requires level 65 farming. That's what I say about that, okay? You know, I don't love farming as much as the next guy. Okay, I know there is at least one of you out there who super loves farming, but like, come on, I don't want to stop what I'm doing just randomly and like go do some farm runs. So don't love this. Luckily, Kourend does have the only like active farming method in the game. So if you're going Kourend, it is sort of already taken care of for you. Now you do, assuming this works the same way as it did last year, have to plant normal Hespori. Farming ticks are 5 times faster, so I think last year it took something around like 6 hours for the boss to grow. So unless we have like an instant growth farming relic to kind of tie in with this, do keep that in mind. So if you're going Kourend and you want to fight this boss, you're probably taking Karen first just so you can kind of like get that underway for yourself, and then you can fight him towards the end of day 1. That's what I had to do last year. Now, given where Hespori sits in the game, he's also probably an easier boss. They could always change the mechanics. It may not be the same mechanics as Echo Hespori last year. Entirely possible, but I will be a little surprised if they make him more difficult. So that to me says this is probably like, it's an early game, if you will, early game Echo boss. I don't know, mid game Echo boss. It's the easier one. That's my guess. And that also probably means that the weapon isn't going to be like the tippity top end of weapons. It's probably a little bit more muted. Kind of like what we saw with the Hespori weapon last year. Like, it was good, but it wasn't like, maybe besides melee, taking it into like the Inferno for something fun, because it had a really long range to it. It wasn't like max DPS. Like, you would probably outclass it on the magic side once you got to something like, I think any of your charge staffs, like a Trident even. For ranged, it was not great. I think any crossbow outdid it. But for melee, it was interesting because it had extra range to it. So I'm not expecting a short bow that's going to be like ultra cracked, but hey, it's got like a passive heal type of thing, so they say. So I mean, that could have some uses to it. And also what I find interesting about this picture is the guy is wearing melee armor. A couple of folks have pointed out, you can tell kind of the areas that people are picking in these different Echo boss pictures. Now, I don't know if this actually means anything because Oathplate armor is available in Karen, so he could just be rocking like a really powerful Karen looking setup. But that could also mean maybe this bow does more than just range for us, so maybe it's more similar to like what we had last year with the Hespori weapon. Maybe this will end up having a good use in like melee. Last year we also had the never miss range. I kind of don't want to see that again personally, but maybe we have like a tank range sort of build going on. I don't know. And I also found it a little bit interesting that the bow sort of resembles the crystal bow. Now, I doubt it's going to have any of the sort of like crystal-related effects because this isn't Taranwin, but it does make me wonder if maybe some of the stats will be similar to like a Bofa, so that would make it probably really strong. And if this really is one of the easier bosses, then would that make a lot of sense? Kind of feels like maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe that was just a design choice where they wanted to go off of something that already existed in the game to make it feel like it fit a little more. I don't know. That's a tough one. Now, I am going to be covering all of the reveals, so if you want to see those, you know the deal. Make sure to subscribe. And I'll also be doing a League's Progress series once the League starts, so that'll be around for you as well. And of course, if you want to tell me how great Echo Hespori was last year and how excited you are to do farming runs, make sure to join the Discord. Is anybody going to actually say that, really? Like, who enjoys farming, dude? Yeah, the Discord's linked in the description. All right, it's down there. That's the YouTube stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.